There's a great deal of hype around blockchain technology, but the mechanisms behind it are still obscure. How does it work? What is it used for? Here are some answers. Blockchain technology is a sequence of blocks that allows you to structure data. This is not a new technology. It was first studied in 1991 by Stuart Haber and W. Scott Stornetta, who wanted to timestamp documents so that they would be impossible to forge. Some 26 years later, the foundation of the technology remains the same, but the chain has come a long way. There are as many styles, uses, and structures as there are blockchains. Obviously, we cannot talk about blockchain without mentioning Satoshi Nakamoto, who made it popular with the introduction of Bitcoin in 2009. But we'll talk about this cryptocurrency later, because blockchain does not necessarily mean Bitcoin. The blockchain is a distributed, consensus-based database. More precisely, it is a register containing data that is distributed among an indefinite number of people or organizations who must agree on the content of the register. The data within a blockchain varies depending on its purpose. For example, a blockchain can be used as a transaction register. In most cases, transactions will be timestamped and sometimes geolocated. Bitcoin actually uses blockchain technology to establish and maintain a ledger of transactions between individuals in a secure manner. Blockchain technology is based on the cryptographic function of hashing. Hashing allows users to obtain a unique digital fingerprint for a given input value. This means that no two separate input values will ever produce the same fingerprint. It is a specific identifier for digital data. Let's take the example of a block. First, we must have relevant data to record. This data is obviously the basis of our block and will usually be timestamped. The block also contains a reference to the previous block in the chain. More precisely, each block contains the unique digital fingerprint of the previous block. An essential component of our block is that it has its own unique digital fingerprint. This fingerprint is created through hashing that is applied to the block data and its timestamp, but also with the unique digital fingerprint of the previous block. Finally, an arbitrary constraint is applied to our block and must be resolved before confirming the addition of our block to the chain. The three main components of our block are therefore the relevant data, the unique digital fingerprint obtained through cryptography, and an arbitrary constraint. As we can see, whenever the content of our block changes, the unique digital fingerprint of our block also changes. For example, if the content of the previous block changes, the unique fingerprint of the previous block also undergoes a corresponding change that in turn alters the unique fingerprint of our block. If the basic data is modified, the unique digital fingerprint of our block is also modified. Likewise, if the timestamp of the data is modified, the unique digital fingerprint of our block changes, and that's without counting the arbitrary constraint of the block that must be solved again before the modified block can be added to the chain. Therefore, in order to be able to modify an element of any block within the chain, it is necessary to be able to modify all of the blocks that follow it, in addition to solving the arbitrary constraint of each of the modified blocks. Since the technology is distributed over dozens or even thousands of servers or computers, modifying a previous block implies that a majority of these servers agree that the blockchain should be modified, which is impossible. As for arbitrary constraints, they vary based on the blockchain and can be more or less complex. In the case of Bitcoin, a constraint is a mathematical challenge and refers to the concept of proof of work. This challenge, to be solved before allowing a block to be added to the chain, takes into account the block itself and a more or less random value under a constraint. The random value will be modified repeatedly until the constraint is resolved. One can think, for example, of an arbitrary mathematical constraint on the unique digital fingerprint of our block. For example, the first 4 characters of the unique digital fingerprint must be 0. We are therefore looking for a random value to add to our block to solve the mathematical constraint. In the Bitcoin example, solving the mathematical challenge requires several minutes of computation. The resolution of this mathematical constraint also requires a considerable amount of time, energy, and resources. On some blockchains, the proof of work constraint is replaced by another arbitrary constraint that is often less resource intensive, such as proof of cooperation, proof of capacity, or proof of existence. In most cases, the person or entity responsible for resolving the arbitrary mathematical constraint will be rewarded. In other words, if a block is added to the blockchain, it is because it is valid, and the person or entity that allowed it to be validated should be compensated. In the case of Bitcoin, the remuneration is itself paid in Bitcoin. As discussed above, a blockchain can contain anything, not just a list of transactions. What information is relevant for us or our company to track? What specific data should be tracked? For example, it may be relevant to collect proof of maintenance for our public infrastructures. New uses of blockchain technology are emerging every day, and more companies and governments are trying to understand how this innovation could affect them. There is still a lot of uncertainty, but we hope that this quick overview will be useful. For more information, visit our website to consult the many articles, videos, and podcasts available on the subject. Stay tuned for developments and news by subscribing to our newsletter dedicated to blockchain and smart contracts. Thank you for your attention. We look forward to creating more videos for you and seeing you at our next conference.